in 1960, right after JFK is elected. What he doesn't know is that a former postal worker named Richard Pavlik wants to kill him, and he's packed his car with 7 sticks of dynamite. So as JFK leaves his house, all the killer has to do is hit the little trigger mechanism that's in his car, and boom, will go the dynamite. And what saves his life, I don't want to ruin it, but it has to do with Jackie, and it's one of the craziest JFK stories you've never heard. And this is true, that there was a secret plot to kill George Washington at the height of the Revolutionary War. And when George Washington found out about it, he gathered up those responsible, he built a gallows, and then he hanged the person responsible in front of 20,000 people. And JFK is just a kid, he's in the Navy, and the ship goes down, a number of men are dead, and they realize the boat's gone. And JFK takes the guy who's unconscious and puts him on his back. And they swim to this island that's nearby. But there's no food on the island. So JFK goes, don't worry, there's another island, I'm gonna go swim to that one. And he goes, and again, they have no food, no water. And he swims to the next island. And then they're like, okay, comes back to, I got this better place to go. He puts the guy on his back again. And it's the most, it almost sounds like a story you would make up.
Welcome back to the Facts First podcast. I'm your host, Tim Blaine. My guest today is Brad Meltzer, an Emmy-nominated and #1 New York Times bestselling author of thrillers like The Lightning Rod and The Escape Artist. He is one of those rare writers to hit bestseller lists across multiple genres, and he's written bestselling nonfiction like The JFK Conspiracy, which we're going to talk about today, and The Nazi Conspiracy. Brad, it's such an honor for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
This, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you this, but this book is a nonfiction work that reads like fiction. And was that an intentional thing for you, or is that so ingrained as a fiction writer that you just can't help but tell stories like that?
I think it's just the way that I like stories to be told. I mean, I write thrillers and have written thrillers for almost 30 years now. And for me, I don't care about, the tiny minutia of where this is on the map and what happened on the, resolution number 1926. Like, it doesn't matter to me. What matters are the real people and what really happened. And it's probably no surprise that I'm attracted to these stories. So it started for me. I found although I will say I'm obsessed with footnotes. And the reason I got into writing history, we did Decode It on the History Channel, and that was fun. But when it was over, people kept saying, we want Decode It back. And I was like, well, I want to keep doing it, but I'm just going to do it in book form. And I found in a footnote, and this is true, that there was a secret plot to kill George Washington at the height of the Revolutionary War. And when George Washington found out about it, he gathered up those responsible, he built a gallows, and then he hanged the person responsible in front of 20,000 people. At that point, the largest public execution in North American history. George Washington brought the hammer down, was like, do not mess with me. My name is George Washington. I'm going to be on the money one day. Right? He was just not playing around. And I read that story and I was like, is this true? Or is this just internet nonsense? And I went to a really well-known Pulitzer Prize winning Washington biographer and I said, is this story true? And he said to me, no one's written a book about this. It's in every good Washington book. There's a paragraph or maybe 2 paragraphs, the most a page, but no one's ever written about it. And he said, Brad, you should look into it. If it's fake, then you went on an adventure. And if it's true, then you'll have a real adventure. And I like adventures. So I went looking into it. We did the first conspiracy, my friend Josh mentioned and then we did the Lincoln conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill Abraham Lincoln. We did the Nazi conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill FDR, Stalin, and Churchill at the height of World War II. And here we are with the JFK conspiracy. And each thing that they have in common is just I'm going, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I want to know more about that. And so, I guess it's not a conscious choice of I write thrillers and must remain in a certain genre. I just like cool stories, and this just happens to be one of them.
And it is, there are a few central characters, obviously, Kennedy and Jackie, and then we have the Secret Service agents, Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine, and then you have, obviously there's a lot to choose from. How are you going to tell this story? Because there's so much background. Can you talk about the opening? You had this incredible, which should be a novella in and of itself. This it's at sea heroics that Kennedy had. It's just, I was shocked by this. What was the reasoning for adding that, for having that, and why in the beginning?
Yeah, so well, let's just set up the book, and then if we can go to that,
Yes.
because I think it'll make more sense. Is we open, it's a beautiful sunny day in 1960, right after JFK is elected, and he's headed to church. And what he doesn't know is that a former postal worker named Richard Pavlik wants to kill him, and he's packed his car with 7 sticks of dynamite. What Pavlik did is he's followed JFK to Florida from DC because he thinks JFK's security is not as good there, and he's right about that. So as JFK leaves his house, all the killer has to do is hit the little trigger mechanism that's in his car, and boom, will go the dynamite. And what saves his life, I don't want to ruin it, but it has to do with Jackie, and it's one of the craziest JFK stories you've never heard. And that's the prologue, right? That's where we really open. But then we go back to what you're talking about. Is this, because we leave you on that cliffhanger, right? And that is the thriller writer in me, and that's, it's just like, oh my God, JFK in 1960 almost died. But then we go back to the Solomon Islands, to JFK's on his PT-109, and a Japanese destroyer, basically, this PT-109 gets exploded. And this is JFK as a kid. And I don't know about you, but, for me, JFK growing up, it's the same thing over and over. It's a Zapruder film, and it's his head exploding. And then we cut to a shot of Jackie. And really, I wasn't alive then. That's really what I was taught about JFK. And then you hear stories about his affairs, and you hear stories, obviously the accent. And kids today, I mean, not to sound completely ridiculous, but they know more about Mayor Wimby, than they do about JFK. Like, they know more about when they hear that accent, they don't think it's JFK anymore. They think it's after
exactly.
Simpsons.
This is the Simpsons, yeah.
And for me, I was like, we could do better. And we found this story, and full credit to Josh Mensch, my co-writer on the book, found this story, is when JFK is just a kid, he's in the Navy, and the ship goes down, a number of men are dead. One of them is unconscious. And they realize the boat's gone. They're in the water, and they just got to swim for it. And obviously, you've just been attacked. Your ship is gone, and people are dead. And JFK takes the guy who's unconscious and puts him on his back, and they swim to this island that's nearby. But there's no food on the island, so JFK goes, don't worry. There's another island. I'm going to go swim to that one. And he goes, and again, they have no food, no water. And he swims to the next island. And then they're like, okay, comes back to, I got this better place to go. He puts the guy on his back again. And it's it almost sounds like a story you would make up. And what's the best part of the story is not that he saves the life of this guy, but when it's all said and done, JFK's dad's a powerful man. And they're ready to just discharge him. Like, you did your work, you got blown up, you saved the lives, take your medal and have a good day. And JFK says, no, I'm not leaving, Dad. Like, the fight is not done. We haven't beaten the bad guys yet. And goes back into the military and back to the fight. And that's the JFK that personally I didn't know. So of course, that's why we started there, is to show you all the beautiful hope, all the beautiful, bravery, all the what made this man who we think he is not, we all think it's like the cool accent and the pretty wife and the rich family and the money, but it's not. It's this moment that makes JFK truly great.
Yeah. And it sets up the whole book in such a lovely way. And absolutely, I was of the same place where I said, I had no idea this had happened. And and just cutting forward for a moment, there's a moment later in the book where he is meeting with Eisenhower, who had pretty heavy disdain for him and did not think much of him, and vice versa. But then he kind of came out and was like, you know what, this guy's actually incredibly capable, and I'm, I think highly of him now. Not something you always hear these days in politics, but I feel like JFK, you're right, because we have these stereotypes of what he was, and it's often Marilyn Monroe, and it's the assassination, and maybe Cuban Missile Crisis, but we have lost a little bit of that. He was such an impressive person. Did you feel like coming into this, I assume you were a fan because right, or like at least I don't know, how would you label yourself before and after writing this one?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I was always fascinated with JFK simply because he was the story and the quote unquote, his death was the great mystery, right? It's still the great mystery. They've released all the papers and we still don't know the answer of who killed him. So, I truthfully, my love of history really came from when I was in 11th grade. I had a history teacher, Miss Ellen Sherman, she was my history teacher, and wheeled a TV into class to see a movie one day. And you remember when you were in high school and the movie, it was a movie day, you were so psyched, no work, no talk, I'm gonna watch a movie. And she put on a JFK movie. And it was like this, one of those JFK conspiracy films, but it wasn't the kooky conspiracy film that we associate with the word conspiracy today. It was one of those movies that asked the actual questions that still need to be asked, right? Which is, what is Lee Harvey Oswald doing in Russia at the height of the Cold War? A Marine at the height of the Cold War in Russia and nobody's watching? What was he doing there? How did he get back? Who funded all this? And how did Jack Ruby get past an entire police station?
Yeah.
And those are questions to this day that are still worth asking. I remember watching that and it was like the foundations of my brain had been kicked open. Like I was just, I've been thrown down. I was like, what? Wait, what? And so I think my impression of JFK was just fascination for the handsome young dead guy. I mean, really no more complex than that. He seemed so hopeful and so beautiful, and so he just seemed like he had it all. And I think what I admired when I was researching this book and when we were writing it is exactly what you said is, Eisenhower wants to hate this guy. He just, he's beating his guy. Like Eisenhower is your dad's president, right? He's the guy from the old school. He comes home and he, says, I had a good day at work and where's my dinner on the table? It was like an old way of living. And JFK was a new way. JFK had a wife who spoke Spanish and spoke other languages, and she was worldly, and she was not going to just put on an apron, and he was going to be amazing, and they were going to be young and beautiful. And Eisenhower wants to hate this guy, and when he meets him, he's like, I'm impressed. And even the Secret Service, it's the same thing, right? When JFK gets elected, they're used to Eisenhower. They tell Eisenhower, here's the schedule. Okay, boss, you're going to come off the plane, you're going to go to the car, and so Eisenhower would get off the plane and go to the car. And then here comes JFK. And JFK comes off the plane, and there's a crowd of people cheering for him that are like, yeah, here's the new president. And JFK sees the people, and he's like, screw the car. Guess what he's going to do? He's going to shake some babies and kiss some, hands. Like that's the thing he wants to do is like meet the crowds. He's like that modern president who has that need for adulation. And he goes to that, and the Secret Service is like, what do we do? And they're like, follow him. And in fact, when the Secret Service first come to Palm Beach, Florida with him, they're guarding him in the beginning, and they get to Florida, and it's Florida. So they're in their suits and they're sweating. And young JFK comes up to one of them. He's like, hey, what size shirt do you wear? And he tells him, and JFK goes into the house, and he comes outside and hands his short sleeve shirts to all these Secret Service agents. They've been guarding the guy for a couple hours, and suddenly they're all wearing his clothes. Again, this is not your father's president. And that's when I felt like I was like, oh, now I get it. That's a breath of fresh air to me right now. Yeah.
And then, jumping forward a little bit, also there is a great. This scene feels right out of a movie or a show. That this scene where Mamie Eisenhower is giving Jackie a tour of the White House, and she's just had a baby and she could barely walk, and there's supposed to be a wheelchair there, but Mamie doesn't want to be the one wheeling her around because she wants it to be a one-on-one meeting. So they kind of conveniently have one there but never offer it, and it's like, what a tug of war this was. And same thing, old world, new world. Mamie was super proper. Jackie was proper, but new.
Yeah, this is the greatest fist fight between first ladies with no fist thrown, as far as I'm concerned, right? Here is Jackie Kennedy has just given birth. And let's just mention for a moment that on the night she gives birth, JFK is not there. He's on a plane headed to Florida. And he knows that, that she's 9 months pregnant. Do you know what my wife would do to me if on the night she gave birth, I was like, I'm getting on the plane, I gotta go? Like, I wouldn't be sitting here today. But so when she gives birth, the person that's with her is her secret service agent. Clint Hill is the first one to respond. So he comes back. She's given birth. She's hemorrhaged. She's had to have surgery. She's a mess. But they want to get her when they on the day that they have the christening, they get her out. She leaves and is supposed to go home. But they're like, listen, before you go anywhere, you got to meet the first lady, because there's that tradition. President meets the president, first lady meets the first lady. And Mamie Eisenhower, this is the day she could do it. She's going to show around the White House. And as you said, Jackie's exhausted. She needs a wheelchair. But Mamie's like, I don't want to push this woman in a wheelchair. I don't want to look like I'm her servant. And so you can argue all you want, but in my mind, that wheelchair is left, and you'll see in the book, I won't ruin the scene, but there's a reason why that wheelchair is not there suddenly. And Jackie has to go on this tour. And it is truly, it feels, when you read that scene, it's one of my favorite. I'm so glad you brought it up, one of my favorites in the book. But the JFK conspiracy is not just about that plot, but it's about these human beings behind the scenes. And it's this old world, 1950s version of the United States that Mamie Eisenhower represents versus new world, young, amazing and worldly version of the First Lady that Jackie Kennedy represents. And you see them go pow, head to head. And it is when Jackie comes out of there, it's amazing she's still standing, because it feels like 18 rounds in that moment.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And just, the fact that she gave birth and then fairly immediately was like, all right, well, let's move you into the White House now. And, transition team or not, that's a nearly impossible thing.
That seems really nice and reasonable.